and Pharmaceuticals in association with Higher Secondary Principals Forum.
So hello students, I welcome you for this session on the 8th topic of our chapter. So regional aspirations, so this is from the part 2 textbook. So 8th chapter of part 2 textbook, regional aspirations. So before knowing what is this topic, I would like to give you a brief introduction. So as we all know, India became free on 15th August 1947. So very soon we had to face the issue of partition. There was displacement of people from one side of the border to another. So there was this lot of violence which was involved in partition, the issue of partition, then there was displacement of people. Also another issue was integration of princely states into the Indian Union, which was successfully done. And at the same time we find there was reorganization of states based on linguistic grounds. So states were created on the languages which were spoken in that particular region. So these were the issues which were of national importance after independence. But we also find that students, there were certain issues which were regional in nature and they also had to be taken care of. So there were different regional issues in different regions of India. So particularly in this chapter, we're going to see the regional issues that were present in Jammu and Kashmir region, Punjab and the northeastern states. So let us first see the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. So as we all know, Jammu and Kashmir was a princely state before independence. So there was a ruler, Maharaja Hari Singh, and he did not want it either to merge with India or Pakistan. He just wanted it to be a separate state. But what we find here is there was also interest in the Kashmir region by Pakistan, wherein they claimed that Kashmir belonged to them because the majority of the population which was residing there was Muslim. So we find like there was another movement which had started in Jammu and Kashmir itself by Sheikh Abdullah of National Conference, and his basic demand was he wanted to get rid of Maharaja, but he did not want it to join it with Pakistan. So the National Conference, to which Sheikh Abdullah belonged, it had also a long association with the Congress party. Okay? And in October 1947, we find there's some interesting thing which happens. So what Pakistan does is they send in 1947 tribal infiltrators into the Kashmir region. Okay, so now Maharaja was petrified, so he had to ask for Indian help, so help from the Indian army, and Indian government agreed to help Maharaja Hari Singh. So this situation had forced to ask for Indian military help. Okay, so Maharaja Hari Singh, he asked for Indian help. So Indian government provided this help, and there was also one condition that Maharaja had to sign instrument of accession with the government of India. Okay, and there was one more thing to it. So Maharaja Hari Singh, he said, he agreed to merge Kashmir with India on one ground, that also there will be special status which would be given to Kashmir region. So this special status was given to Kashmir under Article 370 of the Indian Constitution, and under Article 370, this article gave Kashmir greater autonomy. Okay, so this was always has been demand of Kashmir for greater autonomy in their regional affairs. Okay, so when we say Article 370 under special status, they also enjoy certain benefits under it. So there was the state had its own constitution. The laws which were passed by the parliament had to be accepted by the legislative government of the state, and only then those laws could be passed. Okay. So when we say Article 370, which was for regional autonomy in the Jammu and Kashmir region, students, we find that after special status was given to Kashmir, Maharaja Hari Singh, he becomes the Prime Minister of State of Jammu and Kashmir, while India agreed to grant provisional autonomy under the Article 370. Now you might be saying, why Prime Minister? So at that time, the head of the government in the state of Jammu and Kashmir was called as Prime Minister. So when we say about Article 370, there were two basic reactions. Okay, one which was coming from outside the Jammu and Kashmir region, and there was another reaction to this article within the Kashmir region itself. So first of all, there was a section of people outside Jammu and Kashmir who thought that by providing the special status under Article 370, what is happening is it is not allowing the full integration of the state of Jammu and Kashmir into India, as they are getting certain special provisions, okay, special powers. There is a greater regional autonomy, and this section also felt like this Article 370 should be revoked. It should not continue in the Kashmir region, and Kashmir should be basically treated like any other state of Indian Union. So there was complete opposition to this Article 370 by one group, and at the same time, on the other hand, we find there were Kashmiris, people within Kashmir, who believed that although Article 370, although through article special status was given, the aspirations of the people were not fulfilled in practice. So what we find here is, first, they said like the promise that accession would be referred to the people of the state after the situation created by tribal invasion has not been fulfilled. So that was the one thing. Secondly, we find like the people say the special federal state which was guaranteed by Article 370, it has not come into practice. So this is something which has eroded in practice. So it's only present in the constitution or maybe the book of laws. So in practice there was not much provisions or status which was given to Kashmir region. And thirdly, they also felt like democracy which was practiced in other sections of the country was not institutionalized in the same way in Kashmir. So these were the different issues which the Kashmiris felt. So even after granting special status to Kashmir under 370, there was this section of people who were feeling that there had not been much things which had come with this special status. So students, this was the issue in Kashmir region, wherein there was time to time demand for regional autonomy, and which was also given to them through Article 370. So that's the issue in Jammu and Kashmir. And apart from this, we will look at another region, that's Punjab, the Punjab region. Now, what happens in Punjab is, as we all know, under Reorganization of States Act, states were created on the basis of language which was spoken in that particular region. So there were different states created on the basis of language. But in the case of Punjab, it was quite different. They had to wait until 1966 so that only Punjab speaking state could be made. So what happened here is, while the rest of the country was reorganized on linguistic lines in 1950s, Punjab had to wait till 1966 for the creation of Punjabi speaking state. So there was creation of Punjabi speaking state only in 1966, wherein states of today's present states of Haryana and Himachal Pradesh, they were carved out of the Punjab region and made into independent states. So as we all know, there was this group by the name Akali Dal, which was formed in 1920, and it was a political wing of the Sikhs, and it had led the movement for Punjabi Suba. so a region dominated by the Punjabi speaking population. So after reorganization, we find that this Akali Dal, they came into power in 1967 and 1977, and Akalis, they found that despite redrawing of boundaries of Punjab, okay, and there was different states which were carved out, Himachal Pradesh and Haryana, but even after that they found that their political position was, it remained somehow precarious. So they also felt like there was not much political autonomy which was given to the Punjab region, and from 1970s a section of Akalis began to demand political autonomy for this region. So they started demanding again greater political autonomy for this region, and there was a resolution passed by this Akali Dal at Anandpur Sahib in 1973, wherein they demanded for greater autonomy for Punjab, and it also enjoyed a limited response among the Sikh population. And later we find, like in 1980, Akali Dal government was dismissed, and we find that after that Akali Dal, they launched another movement wherein they raised the question of sharing or distribution of river water of Ravi Bis. So which this river, it flowed in the Punjab, Haryana and the Rajasthan region. So they raised this issue of sharing of river water. So this was another regional issue which was very important for the Punjabi population. Okay, so sharing of river water. So another demand was autonomous Sikh identity, okay, greater political autonomy, and later we find that there was also entry of extremist elements into this movement, and the Akali Dal leadership was replaced by somehow, we find there's entry of extremist or extremist elements which came into the scene. And what they did is, apart from great autonomous Sikh identity, they also started demanding the extremist elements for secession. So secession from India. So now what is secession? So when a region within a particular country, it demands that it should be given there should be separate country which should be made out into that within out of that country. So a independent nation or independent country. So this demand is called as secession. So soon the leadership of the moderate Akali had passed to extreme elements, and what interesting thing we find here is extreme elements which had entered into this, these militants, they made the headquarters into the Sikh holy shrine in Amritsar, so which is known as Golden Temple. So all the activities of the extremist militants were carried out through the Golden Temple in Amritsar, okay, and so it served as a headquarter for all their different activities. So this was now a serious issue, okay. There were militants who were hiding inside the temple premises, and Indian government had to take some action against this, okay, as there were military groups which were residing within the temple premises, Golden Temple premises. So what does Indian government does is, there was an action which was taken against this under the code name Operation Blue Star, wherein Indian government sent army into the temple premises. So basic aim of this movement was to flush out the militants who were there within the temple, okay. They were using it as their headquarters, okay. So there was fight between the Indian army and the extremist elements or the militants which were there. So during this fight, there was also damage which was done to the historic temple, and Sikhs took took this as it's something that hurt their religious sentiment. So they felt that religious sentiments were hurt, wherein army is entering the temples, damaging the property, and also this was considered as an attack on the faith of the Sikhs. So this also made extremist elements more active, or it gave them impetus. Okay, so later we also find, like on 31st October 1984, the Prime Minister of India, then Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi, she was assassinated by her own bodyguards, and both of them, they were belonging to Sikh religion, and it is said that they wanted to take revenge of the Operation Blue Star. So as a result of this, there started riots against the Sikh population. Violence was carried out against the Sikh population, and more than 2,000 Sikhs were killed in the national capital of India itself. Apart from this, there was also violence which was carried out against Sikh in other regions also. So national capital was the area which was worst hit by these violent attacks. So with this, the situation in Punjab, it was not normal, or that it was very, there was a lot of tension which was there in Punjab region. So now there were initiatives which were made in order to bring about changes, or like to establish peace in the Punjab region. So after Indira Gandhi, we find Rajiv Gandhi becoming the Prime Minister of India, okay, and he started initiating dialogue with the Akali Dal leaders, and he also reached into an agreement with the Akali Dal leader Harchand Singh Longowal, and this accord was known as the Rajiv Longowal Accord, or also the Punjab Accord. So now, what was this Punjab Accord, or what was this Rajiv Longowal Accord? So there were different regional issues which were prevalent in Punjab region, and they were tried to be solved through this Rajiv Longowal Accord. So first of all, there was this, it was agreed that Chandigarh would be transferred to Punjab. So today, if you see, Chandigarh also serves as the capital of Punjab as well as the Haryana region. There was also separate commission which was made, okay, or it would be appointed in order to solve this border issue which was then prevalent between Punjab and Haryana region. So border issue between Punjab and Haryana was also supposed to be resolved through this Rajiv Longowal Pact. And thirdly, since I told you, there was also this very important issue of sharing of river water of Ravi and Bis. So under Rajiv Longowal Accord, it was said that there will be tribunal which would be set up in order to decide the sharing of Ravi-Bis river water and among the Punjab, Haryana and the Rajasthan region. So with this Rajiv Longowal Accord or the Punjab Accord, there was an initiative which was taken up to bring about peace in the Punjab region. So that's the issue which was there present in Punjab and which was tried to be solved with this Rajiv Longowal Accord. Okay. So that's the issue in Punjab, my dear students. And apart from this, there was one more issue in the northeast states. So what we find today is, as we all know, today there are these 7 states, also referred as 7 sisters in the northeast region, namely Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, Meghalaya, Tripura. So do you all know that these were states, most of these states, they were carved out of Assam region, okay? And earlier it was mostly the Assam which was dominant in this region. Later there was separation of all these different states from the Assam region, okay? So let us look into this issue. Now what was the issue in northeast? So in northeast, regional aspirations reached a turning point in 1980s So region also witnessed changes right from 1947. So Tripura, Manipur, Khasi Hills of Meghalaya were, as we all know, they were princely states which merged with India. So later we also find Nagaland was created as a state in 1963, Manipur, Tripura, Meghalaya in 72, and Mizoram and Arunachal Pradesh became separate states only in 1987. But one thing about this region was, this region they always felt they were cut off from the Indian region, and because of this they did not get much of the economic benefits, or they were not getting the benefits of economic developments which were taking place in the country. So this has been always the one of the issue in the northeast region. Now one thing that we find is there was now growing demand for political autonomy among the present states. So what happens here is, after independence we find that there was, except Manipur and Tripura, this region comprised of the state of Assam, and we find growing demand for state autonomy among the small regions within this northeast region. They arose because the non-Assamese population which was residing in the northeast region, the non-Assamese population which was residing in this region, they felt like somehow the Assamese government is imposing Assamese culture on them, it is imposing Assamese language on them. So they felt somewhere their identity would be in danger. So they started demanding for separate state or demand for political autonomy. Okay, and also it was seen that they wanted their own administration and leadership which could fulfill their own demands. So they wanted to get separated from the Assam region and make their own administration wherein their own leadership will try to fulfill their different demands. Okay. So finally we find that this demand was also accepted, and at different points of time there was creation of different states, that is Meghalaya, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, which were made out of Assam, and later we also find Tripura and Manipur, they were also upgraded into states. So they were given statehood. And apart from this issue of regional autonomy, out of which different states were carved out of the Assam region, we also find like there is also secessionist movement. I've told you what is secessionist movement. So when there is a demand within a particular country by a particular region that they want to be separated from that mainland and create their own separate country. Okay, so that's called as secession. So there was this demand for secession, or there were secessionist movements which had started, and this was the demand mainly by the Mizo population. So after independence, the Mizo Hills was made an autonomous district within the Assam. So within Assam Mizo Hills, it was an autonomous district. But many Mizos, or some Mizos, they felt that Mizoram region, it never belonged to the British India, and also they do not belong to the Indian Union. Okay. And so this anger, this led to the formation of Mizoram National Front under the leadership of Lal Denga, and their demand was of secession. So there was formation of Mizoram National Front, MNF, and their demand was for secession, and the leader of this movement was Lal Denga. So in 1966, Mizoram National Front, they started armed campaign for independence. They started armed campaign for independence from the Indian region. And what we find is this was a 2-decade battle between the Mizo population insurgents and the Indian army. So there was this fight almost for 2 decades, and at the end of 2 decades it was found that there was nothing which was coming out of this struggle. So now there was a need which was felt for some kind of agreement or a better way in which this issue could be solved out. So what happens next is very interesting. So negotiations started again also in this issue. So Lal Denga started negotiations with the Indian government. So Lal Denga, he was the leader of the Mizoram National Front, and then Prime Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi, he came into negotiations in order to bring about some positive conclusion to this issue. So again in 1986, a peace agreement was signed between Rajiv Gandhi and the Lal Denga. So he was, and Lal Denga, he was leader of Mizoram National Front. Okay, so now what was done under this peace agreement which was signed between Rajiv Gandhi and Lal Denga was, see, there was demand for secession by the Mizo population, but this demand was not accepted. But what in turn was done was Mizoram was given statehood, it was given status of full-fledged state. So Mizoram was given statehood, and after this, after Mizoram was given statehood, we find that somehow this secessionist movement, it dissolved. Okay, there was this movement was not existing after that, and also we find that Lal Denga, he becomes the chief minister after Mizoram was granted full status of full-fledged state. So if we see today, Mizoram is a very peaceful region and it has taken strides in literacy development. There is a lot of development in literacy. Also the literacy level of the Mizoram region is very high. So again with this negotiation between Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and Lal Denga, this issue was tried to be solved, wherein Mizoram was given status of a full-fledged state. And one more issue that was there in this northeast region was the issue of outsiders. Okay. So what happens here is in mostly the Assam region, there was always there was large scale migration which had taken place into the Assam region. So students, there was this always migrant, or they were also regarded as outsiders by the Assamese population, and they felt that somehow their indigenous identity or population is at risk because of growing migration of these people either from the neighboring states or and also from the neighboring countries, because Assam is very close to Bangladesh. So there were huge numbers of illegal Bengali Muslim settlers from Bangladesh which had migrated into Assam region. So there was this issue of illegal migration, and as I have told you, they felt like this would reduce the Assamese population, okay, into minority. They felt like Assamese population would be reduced to minority. So there was this movement which started against the issue of outsiders. So this was a movement which started against outsiders in Assam, and we also find there was also this issue was also combined with the issue of poverty and unemployment, wherein the Assamese population felt like despite having different resources like oil, tea, coal, still somehow there was no economic development, and the migration which was happening, it also further could enhance their problem of poverty or unemployment. Okay, so that was another thing. So what we find here is there was this organization in 1979, All Assam Students Union, also known as AASU. Okay, so it was a students group and it was not supported by any, or it was not affiliated to any political party. So what we find is they raised this issue of illegal migration into the Assam region. So the movement was against illegal migrants, against domination of Bengalis. There was domination of Bengalis and other outsiders, and also there was this issue of faulty voters who were registered into the state of Assam. So these were the three different issues which they had raised, and the movement demanded that all the outsiders who had come into Assam after 1951, they should be sent back to their origin or the places from which they came. So this agitation was followed many novel methods, mobilized all sections of Assamese people, drawing support from the state. And we also find that there were a lot of violent incidents which took place as a result of this movement against the outsiders in Assam, wherein there was loss of property and also there was loss of human lives. So next what happens here is, again Rajiv Gandhi led government, the Prime Minister of India, then Prime Minister of India, he again entered into negotiation with the AASU leaders, and one more accord was signed, that was the Assam Accord in 1985. So Rajiv Gandhi, the then Prime Minister of India, he held talks with the leaders of the AASU, all Assam Student Union, and this issue of migration or outsiders was tried to be resolved. So under this accord in 1985, what happened is, according to this agreement, all the foreigners who had migrated into Assam region after the Bangladesh war or since the Bangladesh war were to be identified and deported back to their original place of origin from where they came. So basically these people who had illegally migrated into Assam after the Bangladesh war and since were basically to be deported, were to be first identified and deported to the place where they actually belong. So this movement was somehow successful. Movement led by all Assam Students Union was successful. Okay, and so the AASU and there was another group, Assam Gana Sangram Parishad, they later organized themselves into a political party under the name Assam Gana Parishad, AGP. So Assam Gana Parishad. So they also contested elections and they came into power in 1985, and they promised the people of Assam that they would look into this matter of illegal migration which was happening into the Assam region. Okay, so they said like we will solve this issue of migration which is happening, or the movement of outsiders which is taking place in the Assam region, and also there was a promise made for formation of a golden Assam. So this issue of illegal migration which was taking place in the Assam region was tried to be solved again by one more accord between then Prime Minister of India Rajiv Gandhi and the leaders of all Assam Students Union, and we find that this movement was also successful. So students, these are the different regional issues which were there in the Indian region. So we've seen the Jammu Kashmir region, the Punjab issue, and also the issue in the northeast states. Okay, so one thing that we find in these issues is that the solution was brought in all these issues was through a negotiation. So when government tried to interfere and there were negotiations which were carried out between the government and the local organization, somehow these issues were tried to be solved. So that's it, students. I hope you have understood this topic, and all the best. Thank you very much.
Prudent Scholars, powered by Lupin Pharmaceuticals.
अब आपकी सुरक्षा आपके हाथों में। ल्यूपी सेफ हैंड सैनिटाइजर, आपका और चेन्नई सुपर किंग्स का फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ डिफेंस। अब आपकी सुरक्षा आपके हाथों में। ल्यूपी सेफ हैंड सैनिटाइजर, आपका और चेन्नई सुपर किंग्स का फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ डिफेंस। अब आपकी सुरक्षा आपके हाथों में। ल्यूपी सेफ हैंड सैनिटाइजर, आपका और चेन्नई सुपर किंग्स का फर्स्ट लाइन ऑफ डिफेंस।